Elise Stefanik, she joins us this morning. She's a House Republican, the conference chair, actually. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ainsley.
Good morning. So what is your reaction to what Steve was saying? He basically blamed everything on COVID or the Republicans. He said sometimes he talks to Republicans, there are at least five, that have stopped him and said that they support him. They can't say it out loud because they want to win their primaries. If you missed that, listen to this soundbite and we'll get your reaction on the other side.
I had 5 Republican senators talk to me, bump into me, quote unquote, or sit with me, who've told me that they agree with whatever I'm talking about for them to do. But Joe, if I do it, I'm going to defeat it in a primary. I did not anticipate that there'd be such a stalwart effort to make sure that the most important thing was that President Biden didn't get anything done. Think about this. What are Republicans for? What are they for? Name me one thing they're for.
First of all, do you believe him? Is that true that 5 Republicans did that? And what are Republicans for, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, that's false. Republicans, not only elected Republicans, but Republicans across the country oppose Joe Biden's agenda. But what's more telling is the reason why his agenda has been torpedoed this past week is because Democrats in his own party oppose his agenda, which has moved so far to the left. And for Joe Biden to say Republicans aren't for anything, let me tell you what we are for. We are for the Constitution. We are for lower taxes. We are for balanced budgets. We are for peace through strength and a strong military, not this weakness that Joe Biden has shown and is showing now when he essentially gave the green light to Russia to attack Ukraine, whether it was a minor incursion or not. It's still an attack on an ally and a partner of ours. He is unfit for office, but it is very clear what Republicans are for. And it's also clear that Democrats are for an agenda that is out of touch with the hardworking American people. We have crisis after crisis 1 year into Joe Biden's presidency, and there is a reason why his approval rating has fallen farther and faster than any other president in our nation's history.
Well, we know this. The Build Back Better thing blew up. He never had the votes. He never compromised. In the end, he put a vote up there that flat out failed. He tried to blow up the filibuster. It did not work. He tried to jam through massive nationalizing elections. It flat out failed. And I just find it unbelievable. But the most experienced politician in Washington had no idea Republicans were against Democrats when it comes to policy. Is that even possible to get your head around?
Well, you know, remember, a year ago, he talked about bringing the country together, and he has done everything to divide this country. But again, Brian, to your point, it wasn't just Republicans that opposed his agenda. It was Democrats. Democrats in key states where they know that Joe Biden is pulling us so far to the left. And this is as we're facing skyrocketing inflation, as we're facing a supply chain crisis, as we're facing all of these economic hardships. What Joe Biden, House Democrats and Senate Democrats wanted to do was to pour fuel on the fire, to double down on their reckless tax and spend policy. We're opposed to it, but most importantly, the American people are opposed to it. They have suffered so much the past 2 years under the COVID pandemic. The last thing we need right now is the largest tax increase and the largest spending bill in our nation's history, riddled with far left progressive policies.
You know, and Congresswoman, it wasn't that long ago when White House aides were touting the fact that Bernie Sanders essentially wrote Build Back Better. But yesterday, as we heard at the conclusion of Peter Doocy's report right there, where Peter said, why are you pulling the country so far to the left? And he said, I'm not. I'm no Bernie Sanders. And the lead of a playbook right now is Biden breaks up with Bernie, which, you know, given the dynamics of the Democrats right now, that's probably not good for the current president.
Well, Joe Biden can say and try to convince people he's a mainstream Democrat, but that is not how he's governed. The reality is the far left has controlled the agenda, and he has allowed that to happen. He has allowed the AOCs, the Bernie Sanders, to pull his agenda so far to the left. Again, the proof is in the polling, whether it's the border crisis, whether it's the inflation crisis, whether it's the largest, as I said, tax increase in spending bill in our nation's history that he proposed, whether it's the federal takeover of our schools and this this woke agenda, that is allowing the progressives to frankly hijack his presidency. And we are very excited as we head into November. The momentum is on our side. House Republicans are going to work very hard to earn the support from the American people so that we can be a check on this reckless administration.
You wrote an op-ed for FoxNews.com, and the headline is Biden Dems Disastrous First Year, Americans Suffering and They Want Change. And you write about you can't imagine how Biden and Pelosi and Democrats could have performed worse in their first year. But he said yesterday that he has didn't overpromise and he outperformed in the first year. What do you say to that?
Well, I agree actually with President Trump, who said he outperformed how bad it can actually get. It's amazing how quickly things unraveled. It's been a disaster this past year. Look at the skyrocketing crime rates across the country, the number of homicides that have gone through the roof. In my own home state of New York, we see crime rates, let alone what's happening in New York City, which is an absolute disaster. We see that in Portland. We see that in Minneapolis and elsewhere in this country, in parts of California. This is part of Joe Biden's agenda. We see the inflation, we see the labor shortages, we see the unconstitutional mandates. So the list goes on. It's really crisis after crisis. And when I took over this job as the House Republican Conference Chair, I'll never forget, the New York Times said to me, well, you're talking about so many crises. Isn't that hard for the American people to understand? No, it's not hard for the American people to understand because they feel those crises every single day. And you can't create more crises. I mean, look at what's happening with another national security crisis. We are on the precipice. Inflation is higher than it has ever been in my lifetime. The American people deserve better, and House Republicans will make sure that we earn the support, as I said, to win back the House this November.
Well, a lot of pressure is going to be on your shoulders as part of leadership now while having a young family. Congresswoman, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right.